ego and its destructive patterns. Because we all have to remember that we all have ego, and ego, what is it? What is this thing that we've all got, and what is its purpose? Essentially, ego, and a lot of people have said it, but ego stands for edging God out, or it's essentially anything that takes us away from God, anything that takes us away from singularity, takes us away from the truth, takes us away from peace and stability. Ego is this sort of ever-present pull to sort of steer us in that direction, to steer us away from God. So yeah, ego is essentially the antagonist, our perpetual antagonist in our story. It's this voice that always wakes up when we wake up, and it's always trying to get us to do anything that takes us away from our path, anything that takes us away from God. So this shows up in a wide variety of ways. And you might ask, well, why do we have this? Why do we have this little voice, or why do we have this little mechanism in place that's always just essentially trying to kill us? Because there's two choices. There's life or death. There's God or the devil. There's Jesus or Satan. It's always this split choice on which direction we want to go, and ego is always pulling us away from life, away from God, away from the truth. So you might ask, why do we have this thing? Why is this? Why do we always have this issue of something that's trying to take me away from God and this true path? And really, while it can be frustrating at times, when you start to look at it holistically, it makes total sense why we have this. The ego is this perfect training mechanism. It's like a sparring partner, if you can imagine that. It's something that wakes up each and every day with us and is always challenging us to do better, so that we're never getting complacent or never just not learning. We're always learning and growing, because as we grow, the ego grows with us. So it's a continual practice. We have to wake up each and every day and say, hey, not today, Satan. You are not going to take control. You're not going to take over my vessel. You're not going to take over and steer the ship. I'm in charge, and you are going to be, exactly what you are, which is a useful tool. It's the ego can provide that facts, figures, and logic, the left-hand side of the brain. So it's useful in certain moments, but it should be nothing more than that, just a tool to be used at certain times and then put away when not needed. But organized society has conditioned all of us to not only let our ego run the show. Everything is designed to encourage the ego, to stimulate it, to tempt it, to pull it out. But not only that, but also to trick all of us into believing that we are our ego, that we are this little voice inside my head telling us to do everything, taking us away from God. So we become attached to the idea that that is actually me, when it couldn't be further from the truth. That's not you. It's just an aspect of yourself that is helping to train you. And so if we never learn about this, if we never learn what our ego is and how to address it, then we do become consumed by it. We become consumed by this little deceptive entity, and it's not a separate being. So I do want to clarify that it's not something separate from us, but it's a little, you could perceive it as an entity that's always there to help us out, to get us onto that path and remind us, like, hey, this isn't meant to be easy. And it's not meant to be easy, because the challenge is supposed to be difficult, because then the reward becomes that much greater. And you can imagine, like you're playing a game of some sorts, and you play that game enough times until that game becomes easy. Well, what do you want to do next? Well, you want to increase the difficulty. So you look at a puzzle, for example. You start out with a small number of pieces, and you build that, and then that becomes easier. And you're like, well, I want more of a challenge. I want something greater, because I want to feel that greater exaltation, that greater reward of overcoming that challenge. And so that's what the ego provides. It's this perfectly balanced training mechanism that's always with us, always there teaching us, always there giving us somebody to resist us, so that we can overcome that challenge and really refine our resolve, strengthen our consciousness, and grow even closer to God, because we've overcome that challenge. So it makes it that much more sweet of a reward, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the purpose of the ego. It's not to be killed and done away with. A lot of people will say, oh, dealt with my ego years ago and I don't have one anymore. And when somebody mentions that, it's a good idea to turn and run the other direction, because that usually means that their ego is so deceptively in control that they don't even recognize that it's there. And that's a dangerous aspect as well. This is what the ego does. This is how it tries to take us away. We should acknowledge it for what the purpose of it is, and then we can really work with it. Because the end goal is not to eliminate the ego, it's to put it in its place, overcome the ego each and every day, but then truly find that balance to where we can reunite both sides and live in that middle path, just as Jesus did, and just as all of these ascended masters have done. But this is a very specific process that we have to go through.